Hello, hello. Welcome to Leap Taken. Here at Leap Taken, I talk about all things witchy, craft related, law of attraction, manifesting, esoteric, and everything else in between. And today we're going to just talk about a broader topic, and I'm going to kind of zero in on some key notes about spirituality, but being open. What does that mean, being open? And I have my notes to make sure I stay on track. Y'all know I'm known for tangents. Even got my little drink here ready to go so I can make sure I'm covered. So, because this is a really important conversation, and I think sometimes sharing is helpful to other people. So, I'm going to share a bit of a story. So, it's kind of a story time as well. But what does it mean to be open? So, for me, spiritually speaking, it's everything from being participating in rituals, active, being present and participating in rituals, whether it's with a group or by myself, working with spirit, or whatever capacity it is, that is, whether we're sitting in an altar or so forth, prayer, um, um, dance, movement, sex. Those are just how I define the actions behind what it means to being open spiritually, because all these things to me are ways where you're opening yourself up to energy, right? Of course, there's just everyday life, but a lot of us have figured out, even if you don't think you have, how to be guarded, how to block off spiritually energy. A lot of people do that automatically because of trauma, just because of where they grew up. I grew up in the inner city. By default, a lot of us who grew up like that, we do know how to block. It's rare that any of us, people like kids who grew up in that type of environment that I did, it's rare that we're just open without realizing it to energy. A lot of us are very perceptive people, maybe a little too alert. It's not common that we are um, unintentionally just open to energy. So here's where it gets a little deeper. So I believe being open spiritually, I'm just going to say being open, usually involves opening up emotionally and mentally. That's one of the reasons for my just previous example, you can't afford to necessarily be vulnerable. Honestly, I would say for a lot of folks, people who are marginalized, othered, and that's an umbrella there of folks. It's for some people it feels organic and natural to be open and sort of to be open to experiences, people, energy, but this world sometimes it really makes it difficult to just be your organic self, your natural self. um, because of that, when you're open, there's emotions that can be released. If you're an empath, that's a whole other can of worms with that. And your mental is affected as well. So here's the story time. So I wanted to kind of give you an idea of where my headspace was with everything. So I had the privilege of going into the past. I time traveled, if you will, in a way of speaking. So I went back to visit Florida. And if you follow my channel, I've talked several times about stories where sort of that was the first time I heard the whispers, the voices. I also used to write a blog, what was it? leaptaken.wordpress.com. Yeah, anyway. And I talked a lot about that intuitiveness and following your gut and so forth. But for me, that was like the first one of the biggest changes in my life is I moved from New Jersey to Florida and a new chapter begun. So stay with me. I got a chance to go back and I felt like I went back in time. Obviously things are different, but I did go back. The lessons that I got from that was many. But what I would like to share with you is that I went back during the start of the Mercury retrograde and during the full moon. What I gained from going specifically during that time was what I really needed, and I've been needing for months now, um, to clarity, but I needed to revisit in the past in a way that I wouldn't have been able to do sitting here where I live here in Arizona. So going back, I realized that one, I have had a major influence on people I love and care about. And that's made me feel a little kind of a little scary, really, to think about it like that, but also proud, um, because that meant that the choices that I made um, were, if I ever wondered if I made the right choices, if I, uh, it, the people who saw that felt that it was the right choice for them. So I don't know, it somehow was strangely validating that all the different moves I made, the changes and choices and so forth, um, it was validating to see that I had influenced others. That's one. And that's maybe it's an ego thing, but I claim it. But I think I needed that because I'm going into a new chapter in my life. So it was nice to sort of do a review of this chapter, this big part of my adult life that I've had going on. And Florida was part of it. So um, I had an opportunity to go to the beach alone in the morning. And I sat out on the beach with my breakfast and I just sat and I was present. This was the type of meditation a lot of people don't talk about because I think this is the one that's oddly enough harder to do, to just be present. I didn't think about anything. I if a thought came, I released it very quickly and I just stared off into that ocean and let myself just get mesmerized. I felt the sun on my skin. I felt the sweat begin to trickle because it was hot and humid. I felt the warm sand underneath of me. I just laid out a beach towel. I was by myself and I sat there. I wasn't even dressed for the beach. I just had a t-shirt and I just rolled up my jeans, so I was hot. And I just sat there and I was uncomfortable. I was just very present in the moment. And what I gained from just this portion of the experience is that I feel like I'm trying to keep track of time here. I felt like it's been difficult for me to do that. I don't know if you're watching this, if you know what I'm talking about, whether it's phones, tablet, whatever, kids, work, projects you're working on, the house that needs to get cleaned, the dishes that needs to get done, the laundry that still needs to be put in the dryer, you know, it's always something still very happening. Like there's several things happening at once. Even if you're just sitting watching a TV show, even if you're talking to a friend, you're looking at your phone, there's always more than one thing happening, right? And it's getting a lot more difficult to just be present. And that was a meditation, to just be present. And I kind of just fell into it because I was in this environment I hadn't been to in quite some time. So it was easy for me to look, the sights, the smells, present. And doing so was great. So when I finally reached the point where I felt like, okay, you're a little too hot, you're aware, you're present, and you know that you're overheating. So I got up and I walked toward the water. And I just wanted to let my my feet get in the water and around the ankles and so forth. So when I did that, oh my gosh, that walk over was beautiful. Feeling the sand, still very much in the moment, underneath my feet, the warm sand and the sun, and the anticipation of getting into that water. Stay with me. Once I waited for the water to come up to me, as opposed to running to it, being too impatient. Patience. I pulled a tarot card recently from a mermaid deck of the ones I reviewed last Saturday, if you watched that video. And I pulled up the patience card. And I bring that up because it was important. I think it was super important for me at that time to have patience, even just this little act. And when the water met me, it was cooling. It was clear, by the way, for Atlantic Ocean. It was very clear. But when it met me, it was cooling, and it cooled my whole body. It was immediately cooled down. And then right on cue, a ocean breeze came over and just finished it. And I was just like, oh, I just relaxed at that moment, just standing there. And just, again, being in the moment and feeling it. And I felt like I was being kissed by the ocean goddess. I felt like the sun god was just wrapping me up in the warm sun, sun rays, we'll say that, right? And it just felt awesome. I felt loved. So quite a few things was happening. I was aware of the elements. I was aware of my body's natural response to the elements, let alone my keen witchy senses kicking in as well. And once that happened, I was very open, and messages came to me, messages that I didn't think I was waiting to hear about, a renewed sense of focus, something I had already done before was, I was reminded. Mercury retrograde, remember that remind, remember, rewind, revisit. Yeah, that was a theme. So I had an opportunity to be open to those experiences, and a lot had happened that weekend. It was a long weekend that I was there, by the way, and I got a chance to go to where I used to live. I got a chance to revisit some old spots. We'll just say that I loved. I wish I could have seen some more people, but it wasn't possible. This was not that type of trip. It was short, and I had to make room for some other connections at that time, which I did, and they were also a big part of my focus that weekend as well. But anyway, just know I felt like I got a chance to go back in time. It was different, and it was from a different perspective because I'm in my current state. I'm now, and it's many years later. It's a decade later. It's more than a decade. It's like almost 2 decades. Oh my gosh! Wait a minute. I had to think this out. I'm almost 2 decades from when I first went to Florida. And so, wow, I just thought about that anyway. So, one, I have a renewed sense of optimism, hope. I have a renewed sense of hope. There's a sense of, I know they say that, I'm an experienced woman of a certain age, but there's a level of naivete that I believe that I was able to kind of remember and bring up to the surface, because all those things are there. You can't unknow something. This is true. But you see, I don't know all that is to come for my next chapter in my life. I can pull cards, I can work, but I don't, those are paths. You could always change paths. Things change. So there's still uncertainty. And I kind of like the idea of being a little bit of innocently walking into the next chapter, to a certain degree, because I need that right now. I need to be able to walk into the next chapter of my life with little expectations. I think that's going to be important. So, being open allows connection to spirit. It allows connection to your higher self, that part of you, that higher self, your intuitiveness. It allows that connection, being open, reserving judgment, setting aside expectation, lowering the desire, the need to constantly be a pessimist. Some people call it being a realist, being practical minded. I'm some people. And learning to put that to the side for a bit, because life is about experiences. Life is about a lot of things, challenges, obstacles as well. However, I still believe I have a divine purpose. I still believe I'm living that purpose. It looks different than what I initially thought, but I'm doing it. And I'm sure it's going to look even more different in years to come. I would encourage you to let yourself open up. Let yourself open up. Find your thing. This is the perfect time to do it during this Mercury retrograde. Go back in time. Take your visit back in time on whatever that looks like. It could be looking at an old picture. You might be sitting in your current home, but looking at an old picture, and it just takes you back. Be open to the memories, to the lessons, to a specific emotion that you felt then, that you realize you don't feel that anymore, which will then cause you, why don't I? How do I get that back? Remember how excited you were? You're looking at a photograph of yourself starting a new starting school, going back to school or going to school, or your kids going to school, how hopeful you were, how optimistic you were. Yeah, you were a little scared, but you were so excited for them. Or when you got married, or, when you moved into your first spot, or when you first got your car, that feeling that you accomplished this thing, you set out and it happened and you have it. And sometimes, and I'm just using things and milestone moments for most people because I think that's easy to relate to. But whatever your thing is that takes you back, or the place, if possible, if you're not someone like me who's lived someplace else all the time, I said all the time, I did feel like all the time, you kept moving every few years, you've been living in the same place. Actually, you have an advantage. For you could just look around and have this sort of memory game, and play that game and just look around and just the awareness of what has changed and remembering what it was. And along that, how did you feel? What were your feelings during that time when you remember, when that tree was just a baby tree, now it's big? Whatever it is. And I would encourage you to connect the elements because that's part of it. I think that's something that's just happening right now. Nature is about to change. For some places, it's already changing. Here, it's September now, so tap into the natural flow of the energy, what's around you. I had the privilege of being on a beach, so that was very easy for me. But, find your thing. It was an opening, and it was an opening experience, eye-opening experience. It was a soul-opening experience, actually, for me. So give yourself permission to fully exist in the present in order to have this experience. Yes, be fully in the present. Be very aware, because if you're not aware, you won't notice, wow, remember when that tree used to be so small. You won't notice the little details. You won't remember when this area, that you drive by 50 million times, you're not thinking about how that used to be just woods and trees. But if you're fully present in the moment and you're looking, you can remember that. Okay? I feel like this Mercury retrograde hasn't been a lot to do with the typical travel. I traveled. I had few wrinkles. I carried on. I did set an expectation to come in with just go with the flow. Honestly, my answer to everything was just to resolve it with money. That seemed to work. Whatever, if you want to finesse your situation a different way, do that. If you're a charming person, charm your way out of everything. For me, I just threw money at everything. Oh, you told me it cost an extra 20, then paid the $20. Nothing too crazy, but there was some hiccups. I'll just say that. Anyway, and distractions. But I was able to overcome them easily, and I did not dwell. But it's also, to me, this time right now, this particular retrograde is an invitation to explore the past, here we go with the rewords, remember and reignite old passions and desires. It's not that you are chasing after old dreams. The feeling, why were you passionate? Remember that what drove you? Why did that drive you? Get in more into that. Which, to me, those are the tools. You'll discover the tools to put your plans into action once you can remember and get in touch with that. I was reminded to let my natural optimism break free. And my time in Florida represent a huge chunk of my adult life, as I mentioned. However, that chapter, it's ended. It's ended. And I do have my memories, my beautiful interactions during that time. I'll always cherish those. But ultimately, being open allowed me to have this experience, to briefly go back in time and to sort through and take what was needed for my next chapter. And I just wanted to share that because it was really life affirming and life changing for me. I'm very aware that I can never go back to that time. I understand that, but there are things I can still take with me from that time. And they're all still in me. I'm still that girl. I just needed to remember. I needed to be reminded So I'll end it here. Thanks again for watching. I'm Mika. This is Leap Taken. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. Consider hitting the join button and visit leaptaken.com to check out my services. Thanks again. Bye-bye.